Good evening. Let us do Chazarah Menachos Daf Lamed Aleph Daf 31. There are three topics to cover today. One is continuing the discussion about Ravin when he said, quoting Rabbi Chanina, that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri. We then had a complicated case of demai mixed with chulin, how to salvage it. And then we had miscellaneous laws with Hilchos Safros, with laws pertaining to scribes. Let's get into it. The first topic, Ravin, said the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri in all places. We didn't know what that meant. We had 5 attempts yesterday to understand what he meant, but they were all rejected because in all of those 5 cases, Ravin would have been quoted with the other Amoraim saying that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri. On Daf Lamed Aleph, we finally succeeded with 2 cases. The first case that we succeeded with was the case of the chest. What's the case of the chest? We know the halacha is, if a vessel can hold more than 40 se'ah volume of liquid or 2 core of solids, it is not susceptible to tumah, since it is not mitaltel male v'reikam. It is not movable when empty or full. And therefore, we ask ourselves, how do you measure a chest to see if it has 40 se'ah? Beis Shammai said, if you measure from the hollow area of the chest, what the chest would actually hold. Beis Hillel said that you can also include the thickness of the walls. Then, building on that, Rabbi Yossi actually had a different version. He said Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both agree that not only can you use the walls themselves, you can also use the framing around the walls and also the legs, the volume of the actual legs themselves to get to 40 se'ah, but not the airspace between the legs. And then Rabbi Shimon Shizuri said that you can actually use the airspace between the legs. However, it depends. If the legs are less than a tefach high, you can measure the airspace between them and let it contribute to the volume. If the legs are more than a tefach high, you cannot use the airspace between the legs. And there, Ravin said, we paskin like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri in all cases, including this case. The second answer was in the case of tum'ah of liquids. Here, by liquids, by tum'ah in general, we know that there are many different degrees of tum'ah. And there's first degree, second degree, third degree. There's av hatuma, avi avot hatuma. By liquids, there's a special gezerah d'Rabbanan that they are always treated as what's called a rishon l'tumah, first degree tumah, even if they touch something at second degree. Why? Because liquids themselves do not need other liquids to touch them to be susceptible to tumah, and therefore Chachamim said we always treat them like a first. The question is, what do you define as liquids? And here we had a machlokes Tanaim. Rabbi Meir said only oil. Chachamim said not only oil, even honey. And Rabbi Shimon Shizuri disagreed with them. The conclusion of the Gemara was, he said it's only wine. But by oil and honey, we say they don't have this special halacha. We treat them like solids in this respect, and they are not always treated as first degree tumah. And on this also, Ravin said, we paskin like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri in all places, including this place. We then move on to topic 2, the demai mixture. And here we had a case of a mixture. And the mixture was chulin. Chulin was produce that was chayav doraisa in tithing, that you tithe kosher. It's mehadrin kosher now. Everything's been done properly to it. And then you had produce purchased from a am haaretz. Now midirabanan, you have to tithe the produce from the am haaretz, and they were mixed together, and you can't distinguish between the two of them. Now you're in a bit of a pickle. You have this mixture that you have a part of the mixture. You have a rabbinic obligation to tithe from. But you can't go and tithe from the mixture because maybe you're taking from the chulin. So the goal is to find something else, purchase something else from the market that is biblically exempt from tumah, from truma, and then you can tithe that and onto this mixture too and save this mixture. So we had 2 versions. Rabbi Shimon Shizuri had this case. He went to Rabbi Tarfon, and Rabbi Tarfon gave him advice. And in each of the 2 different cases, he gave different advice. In the first version, the Lishna Kama, Rabbi Tarfon said, go and purchase some more produce from an am haaretz and tithe that produce onto this mixture, and you can salvage this mixture. Why? Because Rabbi Tarfon holds that majority of Amei Aretz do tithe, and therefore produce that you purchase from them is exempt d'oraita from tithing is only a chiyuv derabanan, but it's something that's patur midoraita onto this mixture that's also patur midoraita, so you're good to go. Now, in this first version, Rabbi Tarfon did not say, go and purchase produce from a non-Jew who owns land in Eretz Yisrael. And the assumption is he did not say this because if you would purchase that produce, it would be liable for Truma and Masrot mid-doraita, and therefore you'd have this mixture which is exempt doraita together with this produce from the non-Jew which is liable doraita, and you cannot tithe from one to the other. Why is produce purchased from the non-Jew liable doraita? Because it's produce of Eretz Yisrael, and the fact that the non-Jew purchased it is not mafkia midei meiser. It doesn't exempt the meiser chiyuv. Now, in the other version, Rabbi Tarfon flipped his advice. In the second version, Rabbi Tarfon specifically said, go and buy from a non-Jew. Buying from an Am Haaretz wouldn't work. Why wouldn't it work? Because the Am Haaretz he holds, in the second version, actually the majority of them do not tithe. And therefore, this is likely untithed produce mid-doraita, and therefore the safek, and safek doraita cannot help with stuff that is definitely, this mixture that is definitely exempt mid-doraita. Now, so Rabbi Tarfon didn't say that. He did say, go and buy from a non-Jew who owns this land in Eretz Yisrael, who made the produce from that land, because he holds that land purchased by a non-Jew in Eretz Yisrael exempts it from the obligations of Truma and Masrot, and therefore it's a great solution. You have produce from this non-Jew which is exempt biblically, together with this mixture that is exempt biblically. Now, just summarizing this all, according to the Lishna Kama and Am Haaretz, majority do tithe, and therefore the produce is exempt midoraita. According to the second one, they only the minority tithe, and therefore there's a doubt, and therefore there's a safek doraita here. Regarding non-Jews acquiring land, according to the first version, they do not acquire the land to exempt the meiser, and therefore there is still a chiyuv doraisa if you purchase from them. According to the second version, no, they do, their purchase of land exempts the produce from the meiser, and therefore you have produce now that is exempt from meiser. How do we paskin? This was the whole point why the sugi was brought. We rule like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri and Amoraim. They're clarified. The chidush here is when he said, B'chol makom, in every place we paskin like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri, it includes even this case, which is a brisa, not just mishnayos. And that is the second case. And then the third topic that we discussed today was miscellaneous halachos regarding scribes and safrus. Let's get into it. Firstly, we discussed tears in the parchment. So if it's touching the text, then if it's 2 lines, you can sew it together. If it's more than 2 lines, you cannot sew it together. Now, the sewing must be done with sinews of an animal, not with regular threads. And Rava qualified that we're referring to old parchment here, but new parchment, you can even sew 3 lines because it's not migun, it's not disgraceful. How does he explain the distinction between new and old? Whether you applied gall nuts to it or not, i.e. did it stay more white or did it get more of a darker tinge to it? Then the Gemara had a question that was left unresolved. It said, if the tear is between columns or between lines, but it's longer than 3 lines, can it be fixed? And it was left unresolved. We then moved on to mezuzah layout shapes. So we had a question: what if you're writing only a few words on each line, and you don't start and begin at the end of the line? By Sefer Torah, it's very problematic. But by mezuzah, we said that if you do it 2 words on the first line, 3 words on the next line, and then 1 on the next line, 2, 3, 1. Look at the top left image in the video. That is okay by mezuzah. It's not okay by the Torah because it looks like Shirat Hayam. It looks like the brick structure of Shirat Hayam. But the Gemara clarified, if it looks like a tent, i.e. 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, or a tail where it's 3, 2, 1, it's invalid. It does not look pleasant. Okay, and then we had a question about the final 2 words from V'hayim Shema at the end of the mezuzah. The mezuzah only has the first and second paragraph of Shema. The final 2 words should be on their own line. There were 2 opposite opinions. One was that it should be on their own line at the end of the line. Why? Because then you have the word Shemaim directly on top of the word Aretz, whereas the other view was it should be at the beginning of the line in order that Shemaim and Aretz should be as distant as possible from each other as they are. And that is Chazarah and Daf Lamed Aleph. Everyone should have a wonderful day.